This panel will focus on the main contribution of microcredit to attainment of the Millennium Development Goals, and I've been asked to take a moment to present the human face of poverty and microcredit's contribution to the Millennium Development Goals, and then outline the Microcredit Summit's new goals and how the second goal in particular can contribute to achieving the Millennium Development Goal on poverty. Let me start with the human face of poverty in Asia and then in Africa. I'm going to introduce a video right now. We'll see it in a moment. It's focused on a woman, Joriman Khan, who was married in 1962 at the age of 10 and had her first child when she was 15. In 1979, she had 2 children, and her husband was earning less than 20 cents a day, less than 5 cents per family member, and it was in that year that she met the Grameen Bank. She took her first loan in 1980 of $10, took a second loan in 1981 of $33, and then this camera crew meets her some 25 years later. And so I'm going to ask that we show this video right now.
Joriman Khan was one of the early borrowers. In December of 1979, she first learned of this new organization that would give loans even to a poor woman such as her. Today, she looks back on a different life, where every day was a struggle just to keep a roof over their heads.
এমকে সাফিয়া ছেলে মেয়ে নেই আমি করে সাফিয়া থাকছি পাটি ডাইকে চাপ দিয়ে হয়ে থাকছি এই কলা পাতা দিয়ে বৃষ্টি হইলে বৃষ্টি নামলে এই কলা পাতা দিয়ে ই করে থাকছি ছেলে মেয়ে নিয়ে অনেক কষ্ট গেছে
She was married in 1962 at the age of 10 and had her first child when she was 15. Her husband worked as a field laborer, making less than 20 cents a day. So having enough to eat was a constant struggle. It is with difficulty that she speaks of those times.
জীবন আমার মনে থাকবো ভাত আল্লাহ মিলাইবো মধ্যে হতে এখন মিলাইলো না ওই বড় ছেলের পেট আর ওই বড় মেয়ের পেট হইতেছে আমি স্যার আমি এত কইতে পারবো না আমার কলজা ফেটে আছে আমি যে জীবনে কি কষ্ট করছি আমি না কইতে পারবো না আমি হিংনা কইবার গেল হন আমি অস্থির হয়ে যাই আল্লাহ আমার অনেক সুখী বানাইছে অনেক সুখী আল্লাহ আমার দিছে এটাই এই কাপড় না পাই নাই কে এক আসলা শুকাইছি শুকিয়ে নিয়ে এটা পিন্দা তারপর আর এক আসলা শুকাইছি অহন আল্লাহর দোয়ায় আপনাকে তো এখন 10-12টা করে ঘরে থাকি আর আপনাদের কাছে কি বললাম আর বলতে পারব না
In January of 1980, Joriman took out her first loan with a fair amount of trepidation. It was for a total of 600 taka, or about $10. With it, she bought a rice husker and began to husk and sell rice to the local vendors. Over the next year, she worked hard to make the weekly loan payments. Joriman made her final payment on January 1st, 1981. For the first time in her life, she and her family were eating 3 meals a day.
ভয় তো লাগবো প্রথম প্রথম আনলাম মানুষে কইলো গ্রামী মানুষে কয় কি গ্রামী ব্যাংকের টাকা আনলে যে মইরা গেলে ওই ই দিয়ে পারাইবো কব্বর উপরে উনি বলছে তাই 600 টাকা না তো একটু ভয় পেলাম তারপরে তো সাহস হইল 600 টাকার কিস্তি দেওয়ার পরে সাহস হইল তারপরে টাকা তো উঠান ধরলাম 2000 করে
Over the last 25 years, Joriman has successfully taken out larger loans and paid them back through a number of diverse businesses. Though not all her ventures have been successful, she has built up enough of a safety net so that a setback is not devastating to the family. Now her grandchildren enjoy a life that would have been inconceivable 2 decades ago. Jodimon will tell you that it all started with a $10 loan.
Yeah, I think the courage that she's demonstrated, and so many millions of others have and do, is so very palpable. I actually want to take another moment and presence the human face of poverty in Africa. And I want to do this by reading a few paragraphs from an article that was in the New York Times a year and a half ago about child labor in Africa. It's titled "Africa's World of Forced Labor in a 6-Year-Old's Eyes." And I ask that you consider a 6-year-old that you might know. My daughter Sophie just turned 7 a few weeks ago. So this is a very powerful piece each time that I read it. It goes like this. Just before 5 a.m., with the sky still dark over Lake Volta in Ghana, Mark Kwadwo was rousted from his spot on the damp dirt floor. Shivering in the pre-dawn chill, he helped paddle a canoe a mile out from shore. For 5 more hours, as his co-workers yanked up a fishing net inch by inch, Mark bailed water to keep the canoe from swamping. He last ate the day before. His broken wooden paddle was so heavy, he could barely lift it, but he raptly followed each command from Kwadwo Taki, the powerfully built 31-year-old in the back of the canoe, who freely deals out beatings. "I don't like it here," he whispered out of Mr. Taki's earshot. Mark Kwadwo is 6 years old, about 30 pounds, dressed in a pair of blue and red underpants and a Little Mermaid t-shirt. He looks more like an oversized toddler than a boat hand. He's too little to understand why he's wound up in this fishing village, a 2-day trek from his home. But the 3 older boys who work with him know why. Like Mark, they are indentured servants, leased by their parents to Mr. Taki for as little as $20 per year. And that's all I'm going to read. It goes on for 9 more tenths. That's the first tenth of the article. And I want to say, because I do this constantly, I can't even imagine the number of times I've read this story, and I always say, and I'll say it again, I am crystal clear that well-targeted microfinance, targeted to the very poor, and well-run, you can't be well-targeted and poorly run, or poorly run and well-targeted, it has to go together, can allow families to take care of themselves and their children and not resort to selling them. And I remember asking Muhammad Yunus 19 years ago, what's the first thing a woman does with the proceeds from her microloan? Expecting him to say, well, she puts her children in school, or she feeds her family better. That's not what he said. He said usually the first thing she does is she brings her children home. She couldn't afford to feed them, so she puts them out with other families as young as 5 and 6 years old to work, sweep, in exchange for barely a handful of rice. But now with her new microloan and the benefits from it, she can bring her children home. Let me tell you the story of another revolutionary that we've begun to champion, and that's Ingrid Munro, the founder of Jamii Bora in Kenya. Ingrid presented her groundbreaking work at the Global Microcredit Summit in 2006 in Halifax, Canada. In 1999, she gave loans to 50 beggars in one of the worst slums of Nairobi, Mathare Valley slum, not intending to start an organization, not intending to go beyond the 50 beggars, the 50 women. 8 years later, she had 170,000 savers and 60,000 borrowers. And in Halifax, she would put the face of one of her clients on the screen and say, we have fast climbers out of poverty and we have slow climbers out of poverty, but everyone's a climber. This is one of our fast climbers. She was one of the original 50 beggars. She now has 6 businesses and 62 employees.